All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another edition of our weekly real estate backstory. My name is Alan Richard. I'm the managing broker here at Maximum Realty Realtor Partners.
My name is Ming Richardson. I'm the compliance broker from Maximum
Well,
Realty and Realtor Partners.
it's an early day. We're kind of getting rolling right now. So we do this every week. We kind of go over the comings, the goings, all the things happening in the real estate market world here, especially in the Atlanta area. So we want to start off talking about something that kind of a concern that we've seen coming through from some of our agents. A lot of, well, not just some, a lot of our agents are getting these sketchy contracts from investors, and they are a hot mess. Okay. And so these are not coming in on GAR forms or RE forms. These are
investor form.
Yeah, it's a pre-made investor form. And because, like one thing you're going to see, what we're going to kind of talk a little bit about today is like the number of showings is down a little bit. The number of price reductions and those kind of things are up. So sellers are willing to start being a little bit more creative and looking at some of these things.
They're a little more negotiable.
And so because of this, we're seeing some sellers that are considering looking at some of these, but they don't know what they're looking at. And there's some, there's some big red flags here kind of thing. So it'll come across and say, it's a purchase and sale and escrow instructions, that kind of stuff. It'll list the address and the property, and then it'll have a purchase price, which is normally pretty close to what the seller's asking.
Correct.
Kind of thing. And they'll have like $1,000 earnest money, that kind of stuff. And then they'll have, and like.
Now, they know what the seller's payoff is.
Yeah.
So what they did is their homework and know that there's plenty of equity in the property. So, for example, for a sale price of $385,900, the seller currently owns $125,500. So you got a equity of $237,246. So what they're doing is that saying, is subject to, and it basically is seller carrying back the equity. And what they will do is charge themselves a very minimum percentage, like 3%. And they understand it's an arm loan from the seller. Now, that mind you, the first mortgage is not paid off.
Right.
And in turn, what they're doing is that they're taking this property, usually a $385,000 loan, or value, can carry a mortgage around $3,500. So what they're doing is that they're paying the seller maybe $593.12, but because that's the interest payment for, guess what? The seller's carryback. Okay.
Yeah, they want to use the seller's
equity.
Existing mortgage. This is a wraparound mortgage, which for most lenders, they will not allow.
Right, because what happened is if the lender get a whiff of it, what they can do is they'll call the loan, the entire amount, $125,500.
Yep.
And at that point, the seller can, the buyer can just default. Honestly, they're getting a rent check of $3,500, paying the seller $593.12 a month, and they're basically using the seller's equity to make their own gain.
Right, and so this is one of those where
it's a 30-year loan. Yeah, I've seen some of these are 30-year loans.
Yeah, like for the next 30 years, they're going to make $592 a month, and then the whole idea for the investor is they're going to turn around and lease the property out for double or triple that. They've got no money, out of pocket kind of thing.
Not only that, there's no guarantee they'll maintain the property. So
if they have any problems, they just walk away and leave the seller stuck, right?
So, if they get a bad renter that can put enough money down.
But I mean, the whole contract, even the rest of the contract is heavily sided towards the investor / the buyer. It is, in our opinion, a predatory contract. And please be careful when you get these. If you get some of these, run them by Ming or I, run them by your broker, that kind of stuff.
Your broker, once again, holds your E&O. So make sure, if you don't understand the contract, please contact your broker. That's what they're there for. And honestly, anything that's outside of GAR and RE, I will highly, highly recommend you get the broker. If not, recommend a closing attorney to look at it and explain to the seller exactly what this contract is.
Yeah. All right, so Zillow just released their typical home, the average home value by county throughout all the state of Georgia. And I'm going to encourage you to go and look these numbers up because I tell you that the numbers, the swing is really, really drastic. So DeKalb County, it's 342. Gwinnett County, however, 414. Walton, 381.
Henry, 333. While Clayton's at 247.
Yeah, 250, right? Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Sweet spot. Fayette County, 479.
Yeah.
You know?
Rockdale, 316, 317.
And these are our surrounding county.
Yeah.
In Newton County, you can still get a deal to 97
Yeah.
between
Right
Clayton
at 300.
and Henry.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Spalding, however, is only 241. Fulton is a wide range, but Fulton's 428, and Coweta's 387. Now, please, I'm going to encourage you to go look at these for yourself. Now, the reason that we're bringing this up is we hear a lot of times like, I'd like to move up in like what my commissions run, those kind of things, how my compensation is. Well, sell more in counties where the median price point's higher. Is I hear a lot of folks that want to move into, especially into luxury and that kind of stuff. And we have no problem, but if you are going to try and move into luxury, please understand that it is a slow progression. No one jumps, or rarely do you jump into luxury unless you have like a mentor or some sort of
well, not only that, and sometimes like one of my agents just received a contract for $2.4 million for a condo in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the reason why she got it is because she had a long-term relationship with these clients. So it's not just like, you get into it, because there's a lot more expectation for luxury and how they do business, the way they think. So if you don't understand the clientele that you're working with, then you might not be in.
You're going to need some sort of an in there. But for most realtors, most real estate pros, it's going to be about kind of trying to move like if you sell primarily in Griffin and Spalding County, that kind of stuff, change to a different county, your price point changes significantly. You start selling in Henry County, your median sale price is up almost $100,000.
And just really quick, what I learned and what we learned over this Tom Ferry Summit was that a luxury agent, she's never done it, but because her property is over $2 million, guess what she spent on open house? $15,000 on one open house. But it was well coordinated and well received, and now she is a luxury brand.
Be ready to jump into that, though. Yeah.
So,
all right. So there's some new data out from NAR where they talk, and we're looking at, what percentage of properties are selling above list price. And that number is dropping. We're seeing the number of properties right now, largely because inventory has been increasing. So we've seen inventory increasing.
Well, and down until recently, interest rate has not gone down. So it really truly is about affordability.
Well, it is, but these are just kind of market realities for us. We are seeing where days on market are increasing. At the same time, the number of average offers received per sale is at some of the lowest point ever. So, we remember back in the summer of like 21, that kind of stuff, the sellers were like, I only have 5 offers. Like, listen, you only need one offer, right? It only takes one offer to sell your home. And so it's not necessarily about, sometimes we have to educate our sellers on that, but just understanding, that it's not how many properties are listed above or sold above list price. If your property is priced right, it's going to move. The number of offers received, that kind of stuff, it is kind of trending down. We say all that because at the same time, Freddie Mac just released their analysis of what's going on, and they said that we are currently 1.5 million households below a balanced market, but that's the 1.5 million renter households and 1.5 million purchase households. So really, we're 3 million housing units, and of those renters, a lot of them would like to be buyers, and so like understand that we don't have enough inventory right now, which is why we're not seeing pricing go. Even though we're seeing inventory rising, it's still below where it was pre-COVID.
But just remember, prior to pandemic, we were 6 million homes short. But due to the affordability and pandemic, a lot of people have revised their habit and the way they cohabitat. So some of that has changed as well. So that's what's driving, I believe, some of the housing demand down to 3 million at this point.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not as high as it was, but all this we say because like this is where the market is right now. But just because that's where the market is right now, that doesn't mean that that's where the market's going to be over the next quarter and especially moving into next year. So, last week the Fed met and they dropped the federal funds rate
by 0.5%.
I mean, everyone
Huge.
thought it was going to be a 1/4 point drop and they went with a 1/2 point drop. And that in and of itself is kind of telling like, okay, we want to get the economy. Let's make sure that we haven't thrown too much cold water onto the fire. So let's add, and so now, they're just kind of stoking the fire a little bit. So they dropped it by a 1/2 point, which is pretty significant for a drop. As such, what do we see happen to mortgage rates?
6.09 for 30
I mean, we're just barely up over 6, and that's just on the overall average. Right now, we're seeing FHAs that are coming in 5.6, 5.8. Right now, we're seeing because FHA tends to run about a 1/2 point less. So we're seeing where all of a sudden, like interest rates are back into the 5s, and this is changing some dynamics, right?
It's also affordability.
Absolutely.
So now I can afford a home that I want because my monthly rate payment has to be the same every year.
Yeah. So I mean, what we're looking at is this Fed rate cut. It's going to be easing the lock-in effect, and what the lock-in effect is for all those folks who had really low interest rates. And they don't want to move because they got a great interest rate. And once you start getting into the 5s, people are like, okay, maybe now is the time in there. The other thing that we're really expecting to see is there's another entity that is highly susceptible to interest rates, and that's our builders.
Correct.
We're going to see our builders start really kind of jumping up there. And then, this federal funds rate, it's pushing interest rates down. They're talking about another 8 drops, 8 more consecutive drops in the federal funds rate, and every time they drop that the two aren't directly connected, but they are
just a little bit because they did exactly that during pandemic, and it actually artificially inflated all the value of the property because now at 3% interest rate, I can afford $400,000 versus at what I consider normal for the last stable. 5%. I can afford 325. So that's the difference.
Well, I mean, but the lowering interest rates is boosting our buyers' buying power, and we have to understand that this is really, really good for buyers and for sellers, right?
It is good, but I caution just a little bit on that.
Well, like I'm not going to caution it, and we have no problem disagreeing. Obviously, being married, we're used to arguing sometimes. Not much,
debating.
But okay, debating. Yes, yeah, she's a great debater. All right, but the whole idea here is that this is the reality of the market where we're at. We aren't seeing properties drop right now. We are seeing interest rates drop, and we're forecasted to see interest rates dropping. Like if you look at Mortgage Bankers Association, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Wells Fargo, Moody's, everyone's looking at interest rate. And we're looking at the federal funds rate going. So they're not necessarily directly connected, but they definitely are indirectly connected, right? And they're following inflation is really what it comes down to. And so following that inflation is a big, big deal. So what we're trying to do is help real estate professionals, because you're going to be talking to your clients. And so when we say, look, interest rates are going to be dropping, there's a lot of folks who will say, you know what? Well, you know what? We're just going to wait for rates to drop.
Until when it is 5% or lower. But I can tell you right now, if you do that, kind of like pandemic, you're going to be competing with a lot of buyer. And now the seller's in driver's seat, and they can just pretty much demand whatever they want. And so it's a fine balance.
Well,
so at the end of the day, even today, you're paying 100% interest on your rental property. So do I think it's the best time to buy? Absolutely.
Well, increased competition is coming, right? I mean, just understand that this is where we're heading into. We're going to be seeing, with interest rates where they're going, we're going to see more competition. And so more competition, means that we're going to see prices starting to elevate at a
Correct.
faster rate than they have been. Like we've been much more moderated this year. But y'all remember what happened? Right after COVID kind of thing, or through COVID, there was so much demand it drove prices up, and so the whole idea is that you want to get in now before that hits. So at the same time as all this other economic data came out, as soon as the rates dropped, Fannie Mae revised their forecast and expects U.S. home sales to increase by 11%.
Correct.
All right, so that's just the total volume of sales being up over 11%. That's pretty significant. So that many more sales, that's gonna be affecting our market right now. This kind of times in like Ming just said, is now a great time to buy.
Absolutely.
And now's the time to talk to your clients, because normally the absolute best week to buy is coming up next week. September 29th to October 5th, somewhere in that time, is the single best week of the year to buy a house. Why? Because during that time period, we have 37% more homes for sale, and you have 29% less competition. The average consumer saves about $14,000 buying during that week. And we're never going to be those people like, it's always the best time to buy. It's always the best time to sell. But really, it is right. Right now, it's the best of both worlds.
We repeated that in the past.
Yeah.
And yes, and during those moments, it was the best time. It was the best way of doing things. But, and understanding that if you can't afford it, you cannot buy it. So we understand that. But understand, once you get yourself into a position you're able to buy, make sure you are prepared for certain things. So have a consultation with your realtor and also your lender, real estate agents. Just so you know, there's so much disinformation on the internet. So be careful what you hear, because not what you hear in other states may not be true here in Georgia.
Not only that, we're also in the political season, right? And so anytime we are, I don't care if you lean left, if you lean right, Republican, Democrat, normally the news is like most elections are pretty negative. And so a lot of times the public starts feeling very negative. And what we're saying is don't feel negative, especially about housing. Right now, there's a lot of great stuff going on here.
Right. You still got to have your four walls at the end of the day. That's your basic necessity.
So the other thing that we've been talking about is we've been seeing our millennial first-time buyers, they're poised to really be able to buy. If you look at the generational home ownership rates right now, right now our baby boomers have the highest home ownership rate at around 74%. Our silent generation and our retirees are about 70%. Gen Xers, our people, it's about 65%. However, our millennials are only 45%. That's kind of the good news, bad news.
Yeah, because you understand, millennial is one of the biggest generation next to the baby boomer.
Right, and so even though even though it's significantly down, if you just look at the different ages, right now millennials are catching up to where Gen X is, and Gen X is catching up to where baby boomers are. So we're seeing where millennials had been lagging behind Gen X in as far as like the age of the generation and the percentage of home ownership. They are now where Gen X was at the same time frame. So we're seeing millennials are really, really active and engaged. We're seeing it where our Gen X are more and more engaged. This is really, really good for us, right? Like now, one thing that we are seeing, a trend that we are seeing is in large metros like Atlanta, millennials are less likely to own homes. They're more likely to rent in the large metros.
And it's about convenience.
It is about convenience.
Also, sometimes job demand,
but
because where they have to be in a certain area, and sometimes it's not as easy to buy in those areas due to the price.
Well, my concern here is that we have an entire generation that we need to be educating about the importance of home ownership. Maybe, and we also have to make sure that we understand that the millennial homeowners and the homes that the millennials may be looking at may be different than the homes that Gen Xers are looking at, like a condo, townhomes. These kind of things can be a very good investment and a housing option for them.
Correct.
For the millennials overall in general. So, please put your educators hats on, because especially up in Atlanta, like home, wealth in the United States really, this is where wealth comes from. Overall in the Atlanta area, millennial home ownership is around 41%. Nationally, it's about 45.5%. So Atlanta's lagging behind, and that worries me because we're in the Atlanta area, right? There's a lot of there's a lot of pent up demand too.
Mm-hmm.
So don't just take it that, oh well, millennials don't buy houses. They do buy houses, and they're buying more and more houses now than they ever have. Let's make sure that we're just not skipping over our in town folks kind of thing.
Correct.
Because we're seeing where home equity is still rising right now. Just nationally, home equity, in the U.S., for the second quarter, year over year, is up about 8%. At the same time, negative equity, meaning homes that are worth less than what they paid for, that's down 15%. And honestly, like I'm hard pressed to know anybody that's upside down in a home. There just really is people talk about a foreclosure wave and about the second coming of REOs. We're not seeing it, right? Well, because no one has negative equity, or less and less people do. There's always going to be some.
There's going to be one exception to always. And just remember, the foreclosure rate is still low, and most people have equity in their home. Now, the only one that might be suffering are the one that took out an 8% interest loan within a year and a half ago. So for them, I will highly recommend refinance right now,
might be the
so
right
you
time.
can have a relief on your monthly payment.
But the average equity in the state of Georgia, the average equity gain last year for if you owned a home in Georgia last year, the average equity was $18,000 over the past year.
Listen,
and
I know
that's like $18,000 in savings, right?
And listen, I know, because I see my property tax going up every year, and it hurts.
Yeah. All right, we want to throw a shout out. We're going to wrap up with a couple of quick points. One is FinCEN, which is the government. The government. Okay, the government is requiring that our LLCs have FinCEN registration. So if you operate as a real estate professional and you have an LLC, right, we have to make sure that we're aware of the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN. That's what FinCEN stands for. And it's a Department of the U.S. Treasury kind of thing. And so if you have an LLC created prior to 2024, then you have to register. It's called a BOI, right? Mm-hmm. Beneficial ownership information. You have to register it with them. The reason that we're telling you now is you have 90 days. Well, and we're seeing where some of these things are taking 8 weeks, right. like a long time. We're going to run out of the end of the year. If you don't have it done before the end of the year, your LLC may be subject in trouble to suspension and or fines. Whatever. Once again, we don't know exactly what we don't know. This is a new thing that they came out with, so just understand that they will start auditing these things. And would it take them a little bit? Maybe. Well, we're in the same boat. We're going through the same thing. Like, oh wow, we got to go make sure all of our LLCs are registered for all that kind of stuff. So please, if you have any needs for any kind of continuing education, we have a ton of classes coming up all the time. You can find our training calendar at mx1training.com. Please have a wonderful week. If Ming or I can ever be of any kind of service to you, please call, text, smoke signals. Have a great day. Have a great one. Take care. And end. Okay, really